Hi everyone, Carrie here from Next Niagara, and welcome to Engage. Hope you've been enjoying your day so far. Up next, we have Refresh Your Resume, Sell Your Skills with Kristen Nilsen. Kristen has spent much of her career working in higher education, supported by an academic background in human resources and leadership in education, currently working as an Experiential Education Coordinator at Brock University. These experiences have consistently had a student-centered approach, which has collided with her HR background when she began working as a career coach in 2017. Her coaching philosophy focuses on providing clients with the tools to be successful and empowering them to maneuver the job search process confidently in relevant and relatable ways. During the pandemic, in addition to her day job, she co-founded the Career Shop to provide personalized career coaching to clients who may be established in their careers but are now looking for a new opportunity. Over to you, Kristen.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to famously say, let me just share my screen. All right, so hi everybody. My name is Kristen Nilsen. As Carrie mentioned, I currently work as an experiential coordinator, experiential education coordinator at Brock University, and also work as part of the Career Shop, providing career coaching to professionals who are looking to make a change. So today's session is going to be fast and furious. We only have 15 minutes, but I really want to make sure that you have some relevant tips and tricks to leave here today and maybe go give your resume an update, freshen it up a little bit, because it is such an important tool in your job search process. So if we think about your resume, I'm going to use a building a house analogy. If we talk about the foundation, I really see the foundation as the content that is in your document. So what is the information that you're telling the readers about yourself? So you want to make sure first and foremost, you're focusing on your impact when you're talking about what your experience is. So what I have seen in my experience on the hiring side and reading people's resumes is often there's this need to include the duties and the responsibilities from your job description, but that's not telling the whole story of who you are. So you want to make sure you're focusing on the impact you made in your role, not just what your responsibilities were. You can also do this by using data. So if you have any quantitative data that relates to your job, so, sales increases, number of clients managed, you reduce timelines, whatever it may be, if you do have any data, that can really help enhance the evidence in your resume when you're telling your story about what your past work experiences has been. And then in your resume, you also want to make sure that you're highlighting relevant skills. And what this means is making sure that what you're talking about in terms of your past work experience aligns with the job posting for the role you're applying to. It doesn't do you any favors to have a resume filled with great experience, but doesn't relate to the job that you're applying to. So you want to use the job description as a bit of a guide and make sure you're tailoring your resume to speak to what that job is looking for. So I really like this particular tweet because I think it touches on things that I often see missing in resumes. And it's that there's content in the bullet point explaining what you've done, but you're not speaking to why what you did was important. So another way to think about this is if you're going to leave here today and take a look at your bullet points and read your resume, does the bullet point answer the question, so what? Or why was this important? So to give you a really loose example, it would be like if I put reviewed client resumes as the bullet point. Yes, that speaks to what my responsibility was and what I was doing, but it doesn't provide any context to how I was doing it or what the value in me doing that was. So I would probably want to focus on the outcome of that review, which is clients walked away more confidently, clients were able to secure employment. So just make sure you're kind of filling in the gap of why what you were doing was important. Some other advice as you're writing your bullet points, start with an action verb. So managed, facilitated, coached, really dynamic action words will really kind of set the tone for what the reader is looking at. There are tons of lists online. If you Google resume action verbs, you will find a huge list, but start with an action verb and try to avoid, responsible for. You really want to focus on what was the action you were taking in that role. You want to make sure you're explaining what you did. And then, of course, I'll say it once, I'll say it again, include the result or the impact of that work, and avoid really just focusing on the duty and the responsibility of your work. I alluded to this already, but the job description is your friend. So you want to make sure you're using the job description to your advantage. So as you're starting to review your resume to apply for a job, you want to use the job description to look for competencies and skills that they're referencing in the job posting, and highlight these in your own resume. So you may not have exactly the same experience that they're looking for, but you do want to make sure you're linking transferable skills or the most related experience you have. I know there's a session, I think, coming up after this about career transitions. So if you are making a career transition, don't get stressed out if you don't have the exact experience that the job description is looking for. As long as you feel like you have related experience, make sure you're highlighting those stories. It doesn't do you any good to apply for a position, and you've talked about all of these great experiences that you have, but they don't relate to the job that you're applying to. So that's where we talk about tailoring your resume, and you're going to use the job description as a bit of your roadmap for what you should be speaking to and highlighting in your resume. Using the job description also gives you a bit of a guide for what kind of terminology you should be using. So this is kind of the language of the organization. And I think sometimes you'll see job descriptions that do this much better than others, where you really get a sense of what that organization and the culture is like. And they do that through the language and terminology they use. So one reason using terminology from the job posting is helpful is if an organization uses an applicant tracking system or an ATS that like scans for keywords, you want to do your best to include some of those words where it makes sense. So if they are using a screening system, you kind of make your way through. But it also shows employers you speak their language. So if someone's reading your document, you already kind of have a foot in the door because you're using the language that they're probably using on a regular basis within the organization. So just kind of a psychological tool to give familiarity to the document. But without a doubt, the job description is going to be your friend in terms of what you should be including in your resume. So first impressions matter. So we've just been talking about the content, which I said is like the foundation. Now we're starting to decorate the house and thinking about what the design is like. So as a surprise to some, readers will often spend maybe only 5 to 30 seconds on your resume initially before they move it to the yay or nay pile. So this is why it's really important that you need to have a resume that looks good. It's not just about what the content in your resume is, it's does it look nice? And if you've ever seen a bad resume, you probably know what a bad resume is. It's chaotic. It's either way too much information or the gaps in the sections to fill the page are too wide. So you want to make sure that you're just, much like when you're walking into a room, what's the first impression people have of you? You want your resume to have that out as well. Because if a resume is really messy, unfortunately, sometimes people don't want to be bothered looking at it because it doesn't look nice. And that's a little bit of human nature, and whether that's right or wrong, we don't have to get into that, but you do want your document to be visually appealing right off the bat. So think about making sure it's organized, not overcrowding. So, the margins are stretched as far as they can go isn't necessarily the best. You don't want too much blank space or, really big text. You want to make sure it flows nicely so the eye knows where to go, and an easy to read font. So I think we all know we're not using Comic Sans, but there are some fonts are better than others too. So you just want to make sure that you're taking a look or having someone else take a look to give you the green light that it all looks okay. Some common questions: length, 1 to 2 pages is pretty standard. This is where we start to get into some situations where, yes, in theory, it could be different for different people, but on average, 1 to 2 page resume is more than appropriate. Remember, this is essentially a sales document. You don't have to have your entire employment history on there. You want to be pulling out the most relevant experiences. So a 2 page resume is more than appropriate. I know it can feel hard to start cutting things. That's where it can help you if you work with someone who can give you some context about what to leave and what to keep, but no more than 2 pages is kind of a good rule of thumb. Headers, so this is where we're talking about education, work experience, volunteer experience. I'm going to give you an example of where you can use a strategic header though. So if you're applying to a job, often we see work experience. I have human resources experience, but it's from a little ways back. But if I'm applying to a human resources position, I might want to bump that experience up, and I have to keep each section in reverse chronological order. So I might do a section titled Human Resources Experience to sort all of that information, and then an additional work experience section. So just know that headers can be used strategically and make it more easy to understand. In terms of how far back you should go, again, this depends on each situation, but a nice rule of thumb is 10 years or 4 to 6 roles. So mine can't go back 10 years because I've had too many positions in that time. So approximately 10 years is a good rule of thumb, or 4 to 6 positions is probably all you can fit. I know we're running out of time, so I just want to remind all in the details, don't let little things trip you up or be the reason you don't move forward. And some people are going to be much more critical of this than others. So you have to assume everyone's going to be critical of this. So spelling, grammar, is your contact information correct? Did you even include your email and phone number? Consistent formatting. If you've used a specific style of header in one place, have you done that everywhere else? So just make sure you're doing that really specific review to make sure everything is in alignment, everything lines up nicely, but you've been consistent throughout the document. Some final do's and don'ts. So I mentioned this already, but reverse chronological order for each section. So most recent to oldest. Update your resume regularly as you get a new job. This way you're not scrambling to write a new document, and include a ton of information as job opportunities come up. Tailor to each position you apply to, and know that you can include volunteer, committee, and board experience, because this is often a really great way to show you're engaged in the community, but also speak to things that maybe you don't get to exhibit in your day-to-day job. Don't include high school experience. Unless you are in your first year of university or younger watching this, there is no need to have high school experience on your resume anymore. Try not to have a huge list of just soft skills, to say skills, problem solving, communication. There's no context to that. So highlight those skills in your work experience bullet points. Don't downplay your achievements and abilities. Really own your experience. Try not to use abbreviations and jargon. Make sure you're really clear. Sometimes we use abbreviations in our work that other people don't understand. And definitely no more than 5 to 7 bullet points per position. After that, it gets too lengthy and it's just too much. I want to leave you with, I know we've gone through a lot. 15 minutes was definitely a challenge for me because I could talk about this for 3 hours, but know that there's no one perfect resume, but there are good resumes and not so good resumes. So know that certain things will be based on your own particular situation, but the tips I covered today should give you a good baseline to help you elevate your document and know that you can submit something that you're confident in. How to get in touch. I'll be around all day, so hopefully we'll see you in some other sessions and networking. But you can find me personally on LinkedIn, Kristen Nilsen. I don't think there's too many of us, but you can also find the Career Shop on Instagram and LinkedIn. We share a lot of great tips, so it's a really nice account if you just kind of want quick tips and advice that Vanessa and I at the Career Shop think are relevant. And if you have any questions for us from a coaching capacity or think you could use some additional help, you can find us at hellocareershop@gmail.com. And know that this presentation will be available after today, so you can come back and watch it anytime you like. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you throughout the day.